formal mission of U equals me is stated as a movement of conscientious objectors to intolerance, or simply stated, a movement against intolerance. And the exploration of that statement really gets to what are the similarities between people? What do we all have in common? Why are we really equal as humankind? And that's what we're going to explore.
This podcast is about exploring conversational thoughts and interviews with extraordinary people living ordinary lives of well-being. Discussions on exactly what well-being means to people day to day, factors that can influence it both internally and externally. We glean insights on how to survive and thrive in feeling satisfied in life with a greater sense of purpose. Guest hosts bring fresh new outlooks and opinions from spirituality, science, worldviews, and standing up and speaking out for what's right.
It's pretty interesting. Man needs each other and planet Earth to survive. Check it out. I think you'll like what you hear.
Thank you, family and friends from around the world, for supporting us. In today's podcast, we chat with Diane Jacobsen in Portugal. Diane was one of the early architects in Starbucks and went on to work in the tech industry until she retired and moved to Portugal, I think about 8 years ago. After moving to Portugal, Diane was diagnosed with breast cancer and treated abroad. She has an interesting perspective on a life of well-being, and I think you'll appreciate her candor. Here we go. All right, recording in progress. Diane Jacobsen is our guest today. Welcome, Diane. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm excited to chat with you today because after working in the corporate world as an early architect in Starbucks organization, you went on to director and principal in a couple of tech firms, which were high stress and pressure. And now you're living in paradise, Lisbon, Portugal. Very cool. Very cool.
It's nice to be able to retire.
Yeah. Well, you've decided to live a life of well-being. Oh, great. There we go. Hey, doggy. Especially, being a breast cancer survivor. Your volunteer work, ruin rescue. Where should we start?
Yeah. Well, wherever you like. She likes to be heard.
That's really interesting because kids are the same way. Don't you remember?
As soon as you get...
Yeah, as soon as you're on the telephone, then your child starts, needing something.
Yeah.
Same thing with our animal child.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. This one's a little bit spoiled, so.
Oh, well, that's good. Well, Diane, with all the turmoil and the stress in the world with COVID, loss of loved ones, job losses, and isolation, and now political tensions around the world and also at home in the U.S., I was reaching for some feel-good reminders to help us stay on a positive track when we feel like we're falling off the rails. And so I thought I wanted to ask people such as yourself who've traveled extensively around the world. You have a broad perspective in life. And I wanted to ask you the question, what is the best advice that you've ever gotten that we can share with friends and family around the world?
So I think this was my first reaction to that question when you asked me earlier, just quickly. I think most of the advice that I got, I actually did the opposite of whatever it was people told me I should do.
Interesting.
So, I'm a child of the 50s and 60s.
Little rebel. A woman.
That was told I should get married and have children and settle down and be a nice housewife.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I can tell you without equivocation is that I think I'm an okay mom, but I basically failed at all the rest of that.
You followed your heart.
The marriage and the housewife and the settle down and all that never happened. So, and it never will.
Uh-huh. Good for you.
And then I shouldn't go to college. So instead I went 3 times.
You shouldn't go to college.
Yeah, because I wasn't college material.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So I got 2 undergraduate degrees and a graduate degree.
Congratulations.
And then I shouldn't work in male-dominated fields, so I picked architecture and tech.
You know, we have come a long way, haven't we?
Yeah. So my best advice was always, don't always take people's advice.
Uh-huh. I love that.
Listen to them, but then, it's okay to just do the opposite.
Follow your heart. Follow your heart.
Follow your head.
Mm-hmm.
I followed my head. I wanted to, I knew I was smarter than they thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that if I dug deep, I could come up with the strength to get through anything.
Mm-hmm. And you did.
And I did. And it helped last year when I found out I had breast cancer, because I live by myself in a foreign country where my language skills are not very good. I was diagnosed with a very nasty breast cancer, triple negative breast cancer, which is the most deadly. I'd never been sick in my life. When I got diagnosed, I just finished having 2 months of COVID.
Oh, really? I didn't realize
February,
that.
March, before anybody even really knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sought medical attention in the public medical system here, which basically is not a system I'm familiar with.
Right. Exactly.
When you weren't allowed to bring a translator or anybody with you.
Was that because of COVID or on top of? Mm-hmm.
I think normally you probably can. So it wasn't until I was done with almost 9 months or 10 months of treatment, which included a lot of chemo and radiation and surgery, that it dawned on me that what I was doing was kind of nuts. Going through cancer treatment in a foreign country where I don't speak the language and a system I don't understand.
Right.
All by myself.
Wow. And you made it. You did it.
And I did it. Mm-hmm. And then I sort of broke down afterwards because it was like over.
You're like, oh my God, what have I done?
Stuff, right?
But that's really interesting, because when you go through such traumatic times like that, you really come out feeling a little more powerful. I survived.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. When all the stuff they did to try to kill the cancer also almost killed me.
Right.
So every time I'm feeling a little, overwhelmed or sick, I still have a lot of side effects. And any of that stuff pops up, I just have to remind myself that I'm alive.
Mm-hmm. You've done some really amazing things in your life. The first one that I witnessed was your purchase of the ruins in Lisbon, your ruin rescue. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that was outside. That was actually in the Alentejo part of Portugal. So it's like the countryside. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of crazy too. Mm-hmm. If I'd taken anybody's advice on that one, I never would have done it.
But it got you there.
Again, and now people will come here and they're moving here and they're like telling me they're buying land and they're going to build a house. And my initial reaction was, don't do it, and then I think,
Yeah, you learned a lot through.
Everybody needs to figure this stuff out on their own.
Yeah, that's true.
I restored a 13th century, built in like the 1250s, small stone townhouse inside of a castle that was initially built by the Romans in the 3rd century to become a Airbnb rental.
Mm-hmm. And you ended up, it still is. You still have it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I still rent that out, and people love it. I'm a super host on Airbnb, and
that's great.
Everybody who stays there just loves it. And I'd go there too. I mean, I go there once in a while.
Well, but definitely put that in the show notes, Diane, for people that, are interested in traveling. It's great.
A beautiful place.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. It is beautiful. Yeah. And where you live is very beautiful.
Yeah.
We had the good fortune.
Now is nice. It's only I was telling my daughter, who's not been here yet, 10, 15 minutes from the coast. You know, I'm
Yeah.
right next to the Atlantic Ocean.
That's unbelievable. It's beautiful. I've seen the pictures on Facebook. Really pretty.
It's pretty special. I
Yeah.
feel pretty lucky.
Yeah, for sure. And your volunteer work with the animals.
Yeah,
That's how you
I
got your doggy.
don't go physically very often, but I still help raise money and coordinate, supply purchases and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for a couple of years, 3 years, I used to go over 2 or 3 times a day or a week and walk dogs. And then I started taking care of puppies. 2 years ago, we had 2.5 years ago, I guess it was, 130 puppies that have basically been thrown in the trash.
What?
And people, yeah, they were like 3-4 week old puppies, and people would just put them in a box or a black plastic garbage bag and throw them in the garbage.
Who would do that?
So, you don't even get me started on that one. But we rescued them because you'd hear them whining and barking, and people would pull them out of the trash. And I hate to think about the ones we didn't find, but we had them at this vet clinic. They had a space in the back, and they needed people to go help and feed and clean up after them and feed them like 4 times, 5 times a day. Because most of them, we didn't have the mothers. And
then they were adopted as soon as
they were adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I helped arrange puppy adoption days where we got almost all of them adopted.
Wow.
And to create Facebook, posts and advertise and get it out there so that we had these events and we got the puppies adopted. And of course, in the middle of all that, I adopted one.
Of course. Gray. We heard from Gray earlier.
Yeah.
Your companion.
Yeah. She picked me. So
she
couldn't argue with her.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad to see you. I wish that, our listeners could see you because your hair's come back. You have this beautiful head of curly blonde hair. You look great.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel good.
So what's on the horizon? Any more travel?
Well, so I have to, because of what I have to go every 90 days for a checkup for 5 years.
Okay.
And I'm not good to go for 5 years. So I've got almost 4 years left.
Mm-hmm. Got to stay close.
Yeah. So every 90 days, I go up to Coimbra, which is about 2 hours north of me, to the clinic. And I've decided that every time I do that, I'm going to go somewhere afterwards to celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love it.
Yeah, because I like to travel. So that's my passion.
Yes.
So
yes,
that's my soul. So I travel. So in October, when I went, a friend of mine flew here from Seattle and joined me. And the two of us went on a 2-month trip across Europe by car with the dog.
Wonderful.
To Croatia.
And,
yeah, we drove to Croatia.
Beautiful.
We eventually ended up in Split, and we took a couple weeks to get there.
Good.
And then we came from Split to Ancona, Italy, and then spent a couple weeks in Italy and then drove back.
Wow.
So, yeah, 9,000 kilometers, 22 different places we stopped. And
that's why I think that and that's another reason why I wanted to reach out to you, is because travel opens the mind like a book could never penetrate. You see people, you learn about their differences, you have a deeper respect for people and their cultures and their differences and the way that they do things. And
especially during COVID. So every country is doing COVID differently. In other words, the rules in each country are a little bit different. For instance, in France and in Italy, every hotel checks your QR code. In Europe, you're issued, when you get vaccinated, you're issued a QR code.
Okay.
And they call it the green pass. So they all check your green pass.
Interesting.
Green, you can go.
Good to go.
If you don't have that, you can't stay at a hotel.
Really?
You're not allowed.
Well, I don't think we have. We don't have a system that is quite that organized yet.
There isn't. But across the EU, they decided early on to have a vaccination. Even before they vaccinated people, they decided to have the system. So everybody uses the same format. They all do QR codes. It's on your phone on an app. They update it each time you get vaccinated. So mine's updated to show I have the 3 vaccinations.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed inside of any museum or any
Public.
palace or any public building without it. You're not allowed to go into a restaurant on the inside without it. So that's a huge incentive for people to get vaccinated because you basically can't do anything.
Right. It is a huge incentive. And why people, I'm sure people have their personal reasons of why they're not being vaccinated. But to me, it's self-protection first. And secondly, it's protecting your neighbor.
So I just went through 7 months of poisoning.
Right.
Which eliminated my immune system completely.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to be in places that have people who are not vaccinated is death.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you have to be very careful.
Well, I'm sorry, but I just don't feel there's any reason why anybody shouldn't be vaccinated.
I agree.
I
agree.
And like you said, it's a personal choice, but my personal choice is to stay away from anybody who chooses to try to kill me.
Yeah, I get it. So
we went on this trip and we were in all these countries and all these different places. And
they all have the same good to go QR code.
Yeah, have the QR codes. Croatia was a little different. They have a different system.
I've not been to Croatia. I would love to see it. It's
very beautiful. They were still pretty careful. They checked us at the border to make sure we were vaccinated or we couldn't come in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think during COVID, it was a different kind of trip. I've traveled a lot. So this time was very different. And it was okay. It was okay. We were outdoors all the time. And luckily the weather was okay. It's really interesting. It's an exciting time to be in the world right now because everything is changing. Our social structures, obviously, our political and government institutions are in the middle of this great change. And I have to believe that we'll get through this monumental stress in a better way of doing things. It's showing us a better way of doing things that are a little more transparent. But while we're in the middle of it, it feels so dark. But we have to make changes, so that we can live together in a more peaceful way around the globe. It has to be done. I think one thing that is apparent to me, being a former resident of the United States, now living in Europe, and still traveling here, going at least into Spain. I've been to different parts of Spain recently, as well as different places in Portugal. A lot of the constructs that you read about in the news are really U.S. There aren't screaming crazy people here. Everyone wears a mask on the street, in shops. There's no question.
Yeah.
95% of the people in Portugal are vaccinated.
95%.
Yeah. And triple
vax.
Over the age of 35. They're just now getting to people under 35. There's a feeling in this country and many other European countries of the culture is the common good.
Yeah.
We do things together for the common good. There's no politics involved.
Right.
Portugal is a Catholic country, but there's true separation of church and state. There's not a single politician who would ever tell you what their religion is.
Right. We've certainly gone backwards with that here in the U.S. And it does feel.
When you talk about a global construct or a global, most of the noise is coming out of the United States. There's some isolated protests in Germany or in France, but they're very small numbers. And most of the local people are not happy about it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So a lot of this stuff is very U.S. based. The rest of the world is really a lot more keyed into taking care of each other.
That's really interesting. My husband and I just feel like, the United States is really close to losing democracy if we don't get it together here. And and it is political. It is the last 5 years of our political structure that's given people the right to their own hatred. It's been made commonplace. It needs to go back into its ugly cave. We have more guns on the streets now. We have more violence. You can see it even in the small communities where we live here in Sammamish, Diane. You can see it in the drivers. The drivers are really aggressive and rude and daring, cutting you off in such a hurry to go places. There's a feeling the tension here is high. It's high.
Well, you live on the knife's edge. Everyone lives on the knife's edge in the United States. If you have one mishap, an accident, cancer, or something, vast majority of the United States would be homeless with just one event like that. In fact, a lot of the people that are homeless, if you find out what their stories are, it was an illness that put them on the street.
Mm-hmm.
I had surgery, including 3 days in the hospital. I had MRIs, PET scans, EKGs, EEGs, you name it, 7 courses of chemo and 20 radiation sessions and all of the doctor visits. And I paid $120 for the whole thing.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
Because catastrophic and chronic illnesses here are considered a health issue, not a way to make money.
Right.
And so they take care of you. And in fact, I was even offered, because they considered me to be partially disabled because of all this, I was even offered tax incentives to lower my taxes. Well, I got to tell you, I'm so happy to pay taxes in this place. I would never do that.
Right.
And I don't earn a living here. I'm retired, so I live off Social Security. But can you imagine?
That's really
that
interesting.
They take care of you and then offer to lower your taxes so that you can live more easily?
I think we're probably the only country around the globe that doesn't do that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But people were telling me I had to come to the United States when I got sick. Friends and family, you have to come back here. And I'm like, are you crazy?
Right.
And oh, by the way, the standard of care that I got, the actual care that I got was equal to what I would have gotten at the top triple negative breast cancer hospital in the United States at MD Anderson in Houston.
Wow. That is really
standard.
Yeah. That is really something to ponder here. Why we can't get the almighty dollar out of the way of the health of our people.
Well, that's a whole separate conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
And I'm no expert, but I am an expert in my own experience with it. And it's pretty freaking incredible. And oh, by the way, all of my doctors are in a practice just focused on women's breast health.
That's so wonderful.
Radiologists, oncologists, surgeons, everybody. And they all speak English. Not the nurses and the techs so much, but the doctors do. And they explain everything to you, and they give you copies of all your results, and everything's transparent. You're involved in your own medical decisions. It's not God taking care of you, and you have to just wait until they decide to do something.
Right. That's so interesting. So the wait time that you have, it was...
Well, I did to be honest, I did all the diagnostics through private hospital system, paying for it, all the diagnostics. But as soon as I had a diagnosis from the biopsy, I was in the systems in 3 days.
That's incredible. Thanks for sharing that. We need to do something here because you're right. Our medical costs are astronomical, and most of us would be homeless if something like that struck. And you're right. I think the homeless population that we have that has increased tremendously in the last 5 or 6 years. Something probably medical would put them under. And our mental
or a
health.
loss of a job. I mean, here they have a basic income. There are no homeless people here.
Yeah.
There are no homeless people here.
Well, I don't know.
If people don't have jobs, they don't live well, but they have a roof over their head. They have a basic minimum income, which is about $250. And they're given food and stuff, but they're given a place to live. They have shelter, they have food, they have medical care. And so they're not on the street. They don't, they call them rough sleepers here. There aren't any.
Yeah. It's probably been a few years since you've been back here, but Seattle, for example, our homeless situation has exploded. I mean, we have tents on the city sidewalks in the downtown area. It's costly to move them. They move them and then they come right back. So we just keep going round and round and round with it. And it seems to be this big issue that, nobody can figure out what to do with our homeless population that seems to be growing. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, cool. It's sad. I do keep up with what's going on because I have friends that are still there.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you that since I've moved here, I've had 6 different friends move here.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, we so enjoyed our visit with you when we were last in Portugal. So hopefully we'll be able to start to resume travel again here in the not too distant future. Come check on you.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Oh, one other little bit of advice that I got. I did take.
Okay.
I'll tell you something I took.
Yes.
When I was coming to Portugal for the first time, buying a house for the first time here and really dealing with bureaucracy for the first time, my lawyer gave me the best advice I've ever gotten from anybody. He said, before you learn Portuguese, you really have to learn patience.
Yeah. How's your Portuguese coming?
It's not coming very well, but I'm much more patient than I used to be.
That's funny.
I think that's with life. I think everybody needs to learn to have more patience. Like you're talking about the drivers who are in such a big hurry and such a big hurry to go where, really.
Right. Yeah.
And people that are so irritated with every little thing in life. Why? Why have that much stress?
Yeah. I think that I'm on this little travel mini series here because I get really frustrated with the small-minded person. And if that small-minded person would travel around the world a little bit and educate themselves on the nature of people and the humanity in every culture, every skin color, this would be a different place. The United States would be a different place. We wouldn't be so divided in our wanting to help one another.
I think you're right to a point, though, because I think you have to be open to it. So I have a brother who lives in Barrington, Illinois, which is about as lily white and upper middle class as you can imagine in the Chicago suburbs. And he lives very much a country club lifestyle. And he came here to visit his daughter and to visit me with his wife. And it didn't affect him at all. In fact, when I asked him after having this wonderful experience where he was quite literally in the culture with me in not small towns, he wasn't on tours and stuff, just in it. I asked him what he thought, and he said, and he was in Óbidos. You know Óbidos because we met there. Remember I met you there?
Oh, that's it's a town that we were
castle.
in. Yeah,
the castle.
Yeah.
After seeing a football match there in Óbidos, I said, well, what do you think of Portugal? And he said, it smells bad and there's a lot of graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
That was his takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 10 days of being in Portugal. So some people don't see it.
Some people don't see it.
It would take a lifetime for them to change their attitudes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The
glass castle.
It wasn't Barrington, Illinois.
Right. Yeah. Well,
and it doesn't smell bad, by the way.
It doesn't.
And there is some graffiti.
I didn't. Yeah. Well,
most people would call the graffiti here art, but whatever. It's I'm surprised that even somebody that I grew up with is so closed-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you get them to travel, it helps a little bit, but it doesn't really change them.
Right. I think that probably you're absolutely right. You have to be curious and open-minded, so you can still travel as a closed-minded person and not get very far. True. Very
And
true.
also, if you go on a big tour with a bunch of other Americans, you don't get the culture at all. You don't
Right.
even see it.
Yeah. You're
It's
just
like
being
going to the
paraded
zoo
about.
and